Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be doing another contemporary YA debut edition of these panels, but now you can get all of the books today if you wanted to, as opposed to some of the other panels. So this is even more special. Um, just a brief intro about me, because I think that that's an interesting thing, and also, but no one actually cares about me. We're all here for the authors.
We
But
all care.
Oh, yeah.
um, I'm Lily, and so I'm a book reviewer slash book, I don't know anymore, book person, book content person on the internet, as Utopia State of Mind. And also, just before I'm going to let the authors introduce themselves, I did want to mention that this is a safe space and that we don't tolerate any harassment or hate speech of any kind. So please respect that and know that if you are found to be not respecting that, then we will have to block you and remove you. Okay, so I'm going to let the authors introduce themselves, and then we're going to move on to the Q&A. So do you want to start, Kristen?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Arlee. I'm the author of Required Reading for the Disenfranchised Freshman. My book came out this past year in February. I'm looking forward to talking with everyone.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. I'm Vanessa L. Torres, and I'm the author of The Turning Point. And it's a contemporary story set in the 80s. So this will be interesting for me to be on this panel. It'll be so much fun. And I'm really excited to talk about my book with all of you.
Hi, my name is Layla Sabrine. My debut was You Truly Soon, and it's right behind me somewhere over there. And I'm really excited to just be engaging in conversation with you all today.
Hi everyone, I'm Navdeep Singh Dhillon. I'm the author of Sunny G's series of Rash Decisions. I'm very excited to be on this panel. The story is a prom night adventure about a stuttering, nerdy, cosplaying, crochet and Bollywood obsessed Punjabi 16 who is trying to figure himself out while dealing with grief and an uncertain high school future.
Hi, I'm Raquel Marie. I'm the author of, having it be married is confusing. Ophelia, after all. It's a YA contemporary coming out of age story, and I love YA contemporaries, so I'm very excited to talk with everyone today.
Yeah, I'm just so excited. I felt like all of these books, when I was making the questions, I had so many that I had to kind of edit down as well. So I'm very excited to chat. The first thing that kind of struck out to me about all of these books, I felt like that bravery and the courage to be ourselves was a huge theme. Kind of, I mean, it's a huge theme in literature, kind of as a whole, but specifically in these books, and also I think in YA books as well. So I wanted to know if you could talk about how your characters struggle with bravery, or the decision to kind of just be who we are, because I feel like there's absolutely nothing more terrifying than like being who we are and having the, courage to be as authentically us as possible.
Yeah. So with Savannah, I should have said this when I introduced the book, but my novel follows my main character, Savannah, as she attends a predominantly white university. Um, this is her first time leaving home. She's the first person in her family to go to college. So that's brave in itself to be the first to do something, especially in a family that never really considered college as an option. Um, but when she gets there, she gets to school, she notices that she's the only one who's really from her background. Even her friends they're also Black, but they're from a privileged background. And Savannah is not. So she when she gets there, she notices this and she conforms. She tries to change herself because she doesn't want to be the only one. Being the only one is scary. But as time goes on, she notices that she's not herself anymore, and that's really breaking her down in her new environment. So as time goes on, she realizes that, hey, I can be myself. I can be the girl from Memphis. I can be the person that I was before I left, even in this new environment. And I really think that was like so Savannah is loosely based off my college experience, and during my college experience, I did not think that way. I was not as brave as Savannah, and so I wanted to put that into the novel to show that you can be authentically yourself even when you're the only one.
Yeah, isn't that the beauty of being a writer, is that we can be braver in our books than we were in our real lives? Because, yeah, my main character, Rosa, has a lot of similarities with Kristen's main character, Savannah, in that my book follows Rosa Dominguez. She's a ballet dancer in 1983 Minneapolis, and she's navigating some complex family expectations after they've undergone some significant change and trauma. And she is in a world where she's surrounded by people who aren't like her. It's one body type, one skin color. She's the only Latinx dancer in the children's performance division there. Her family is not from money like everyone else's. And this is very inspired by my own experience as a dancer at the Minnesota Dance Theater, where I was the only Latinx dancer. And, sometimes being brave for Rosa, like it was for me, is just like not worrying about how much her boobs are going to bounce when she jumps, because she has curves. And, she's surrounded by dancers that have kind of that Balanchine type body, no curves, very, very slim. And I don't know. So it's not always like the big bravery things that come to mind, especially when I was writing this book. It's the small things. Sometimes it's not getting up on the stage, but it's just maybe not worrying so much that, your leotard fits different than everyone else's. But I think when it really comes down to it, she's really grounded when she's around her family. Her relationship with her sister, Glow, her older sister, Glow, who used to be a dancer, is really important to her. Her memories of her abuela, who has passed away, those really ground her. And even though her relationship is really strained with both of her parents, she does find inspiration in them. And so bravery can come from very unexpected places sometimes. And that's really where she finds her courage a lot of the time. So I love the unexpected part of the book, and it was really fun to write.
So, and You Truly Assume, the book follows 3 Black Muslim teens, Sabria, Zakat, and Farah, and all of them are kind of finding unexpected bravery in this blog that they kind of join together to create and form a friendship through, in order to kind of fight back against the combination and intersection of racism and Islamophobia in the wake of a terrorist attack. So in addition to kind of finding their voice and finding confidence and finding friendship through the blog, they each kind of find, I guess you could say, bravery through their own kind of passions. So kind of to Vanessa's point about dancing, like one of the characters, Sabria, is one of the only Black ballerinas who's pursuing ballet at a professional level. And so she kind of has to find bravery through kind of expressing herself both in dance and in the written work with the blog. And then Zakat trying to kind of stand up to her parents who kind of want her to follow a more traditional route in college. And she's like, hey, I'm an artist. I really want to kind of pursue art in college. And so she's kind of trying to stand up for herself in that kind of dynamic and relationship. And then Farah is kind of trying to find bravery by kind of reaching out to her estranged father and his new family, and just kind of interacting with new family dynamics and new relationships. And so I think kind of in addition to the blog and their personal lives, all 3 girls are kind of finding bravery in really, really unexpected places, including their friendship with themselves.
Yeah, to sort of echo the thoughts of what has been said already, I wish I were as brave as my character as a teenager, even now, because I think there's nothing more terrifying than just being who we are at any age, and it's definitely much more intense in high school, where we're all trying to figure ourselves out, experimenting with different identities. When I first started writing Sunny, I didn't actually realize just how much courage was sort of lurking under the surface, because initially I thought it was going to be a much lighthearted story about a brown boy just balancing cultural expectations and dating. And then I started incorporating some of my own experiences with stuttering and bullying and racism and all of those sorts of things. And then the journey that he takes, it's a lot of courage, just not knowing what he's going to do after high school, and dealing with grief, and alcoholism and his family. So there's a lot of moments where you know, the entire journey is where he has to sort of come to terms with who he is. And in the very opening chapter, he sheds one of his most fundamental parts of his identity, which is his faith. So he's a Sikh. He's got a turban and beard, and he shaves that all off. And he thinks he's going to blend and not get bullied anymore during this like really magical prom night that he thinks he's going to have. So there's a lot of moments of bravery within the story.
So my book, Ophelia After All, I keep doing the wrong direction, is it's a coming out of age story, and it's about a main character who has always been seen as this very boy crazy, hopeless romantic, and she starts to realize that she might actually like girls as well, or might not have any type of gender preference. And so the book really is central to figuring out how to be yourself and figuring out the bravery to sort of explore aspects of your identity that scare you. So a lot of the book is based in introspection and looking at the expectations that teenagers have for themselves as they're growing up, and as they have to decide or feel like they have to decide everything about what their future is going to be, who they are going to be as they walk into adulthood. That sort of panicky feeling of like, I'm going to be an adult, so I'm going to cling to whatever is most familiar to me because so many other things are changing. So it's just easier to like control this one thing I can control. But the reality is obviously that we can't entirely control who we are as people, and that giving yourself the space to explore aspects of your identity and question things about yourself is a really important and fundamental aspect of growing up. So for her, it's a lot of having the bravery to accept that she doesn't know everything about herself, and accept that growing up and getting older and being able to have the benefits of self-exploration come at the expense of sometimes realizing you're different than you thought you were. Not everything about your life is always going to be the exact same. Your friends are going to change, your life is going to change, your interests are going to change, which is, again, a big theme in a lot of YA stuff, and especially in the contemporary genre, but particularly through the lens of sexuality and recognizing that it's fluid, and we live in a society, but that sort of trains people to be heterosexual, and so recognizing that maybe that's not true for you can be a really difficult thing because you're going against the grain of everything you've been indoctrinated into. But that in and of itself, even just questioning whether or not everything you like is what you actually like or what you've been taught to like, is a very scary thing to do. But similar to everyone else, I was repressing this when I was Ophelia's age, so it was helpful for me to sort of go back to a character at that time in her life when I was dealing with those same questions, and really give myself and her the space to explore them.
Yeah, because I think that, I mean, echoing, what everyone else has been saying as well, I think that this question can involve so many different emotions at the same time. You know, there's like very much a sense of joy and sort of being able to find a space and being able to be who you are. But there is also like anger, and there is sadness, and all of these like spectrum of emotions that you go through when you kind of like say goodbye to a version of yourself, or like a vision of who you thought you were, who you thought your future would be. So I feel like that's why the theme, I think, is so emotion driven as well, if that makes any sense. A question that I had as well were that friends are a huge part of our lives. And I think that friends also help contribute to, I guess, either make or break this like process for you, either support you or kind of like ditch you, I guess. So I wanted to know, since friends are such a huge part of our lives and our stories, I wanted to know if you could pick one side character to kind of talk about the character evolution from concept to the page, how much they changed, or they maybe weren't there at all and then suddenly they were.
So my favorite side character in the novel is Savannah's home best friend, Bianca. She is the person that knew Savannah when she was studying to get into Wooddale, and to actually see her go to college. And because Savannah she's the same age as Bianca, but she's graduating early. So Bianca kind of feels like she's left behind a little bit, but she's also rooting for her to succeed. So that journey of her supporting Savannah throughout the novel, even when things get hard towards the end, that was like a really great arc for me to write. Bianca, remember Bianca's name because I'm going to talk a little bit more about her later.
I can't wait to hear. Well, I have to say Nikki, the love interest in my book, is my favorite side character, and it seems to be everyone else's favorite side character. The feedback that I've received after people have read the book, they're all like, "Oh my God, Nikki, I just love him so much," and I do too. And I think that the Turning Point would not be the same book without him. And I also think as writers, that's something that we ask ourselves all the time when we're writing side characters. If we took them out of the book, would it change anything? And if it doesn't, then maybe they don't need to be there, or you need to do some work on that character. And for Nikki, that it's so true. It just wouldn't be the same story. He is a boy in the 80s who identifies as he, him. He's bi, but he wears skirts and makeup and glitter and all the stuff. And he challenges Rosa and everything she thought she knew about herself and what it is to be a dancer, what it is to be a Mexican American who doesn't speak Spanish, what it is to be Latinx in the ballet world. But she also does that for him too. It's not just a one-way street with the two of them. And it was just such a joy to write. And he is heavily inspired by someone that I knew in my life who is no longer with us. And I just wanted to give Nikki a better ending than my friend had. And so it really was an emotional journey to write about Nikki, and his character just evolved as I wrote. I mean, I could actually write a whole book about Nikki, but yeah, so that was an easy question for me to answer.
Yeah, this question was actually kind of difficult because You Truly Assumed has 3 POVs, so there's like 3 sets of side characters. So I was like, there are a lot of different answers to this question. But I think I'm ultimately going to go with Morgan, who I think is one of the more underrated side characters, in my opinion. And she's Sabria's best friend. They're both the only 2 Black ballerinas in their level. And originally, I kind of was just going to make Sabria be the only Black ballerina in that particular group. And I was like, you know what? I think she needs a friend because I really wanted to push back against kind of like there can only be one kind of mentality that a lot of, I guess, minorities kind of face in spaces where they're not, I guess, the majority. And so I was like, I think there needs to be 2 for that reason. And I also think it's just really great to kind of have someone to lean on when you're in a space where you're not the majority. And so that's part of why kind of Morgan's character grew. Like you're introduced to her kind of like in the first couple of pages. And then secondly, I also was able to kind of explore the impacts of the terrorist attack because her family is more kind of directly impacted than Sabria's. And so the 2 kind of bond over that as well, because Sabria's kind of facing kind of, I guess, the ripple effects in terms of like the Islamophobia that follows, but Morgan's I guess, feeling the direct impact because her mother is injured in the attack. And so kind of exploring, I guess, the aftermath through 2 different perspectives. So I think Morgan's one of my favorite characters. She's also just really funny, and she kind of always speaks up and makes these like quick, snarky remarks when Sabria is kind of trying to like be in the background. So I think their like personalities kind of really go together, and they're kind of a really fun best friend duo to write.
Yeah, I really love this question because I hardly ever get to talk about Sunny's BFF Ngozi, who is just hands down one of my favorite characters from the book. So from the original concept was actually, I had this conversation with with a friend of mine over like the biryani and jollof rice, and Ghanaians and Nigerians take it like very, very seriously, the way that Pakistanis and Indians take biryani or chaat. So that was the very original concept of her. But and before I even added cosplay and things into that, she's more or less the same character. Once I added the cosplay component, she was just pretty much the same person in terms of what her impact was and her relationship with Sunny, because she's somebody that sort of pushes him out of his comfort zone and challenges him when he says things that that nobody else will sort of call him out on. and they've got that kind of relationship where there's banter, and they're able to have these things that might normally end up in big arguments with somebody that is not as familiar to you. And so she's this very vibrant British Nigerian and cosplayer. She's a lead singer in their heavy metal cosplay band, and she seems to be comfortable in her skin in ways that that Sunny doesn't really know. He isn't really confident in the way that she is, especially in addition to the grief that he's still processing.
My side character, I also picked. I'm gonna do it every time. I also picked basically everyone's favorite character when they read the book, and he's a boy named Wesley who is in Ophelia's group of friends, but sort of on the outskirts. He's sort of only there because he's in like a love triangle with some of the other characters, and so Ophelia's not particularly close with him, and almost finds it like a little annoying. Like she's like, oh, he doesn't even really like want to be our friend, whatever. But he ends up being this really unexpected ally for her because down the line, she finds out that he's also queer, and he becomes this sort of safe space for her to talk about and process a lot of the things that she's questioning about her identity. And early on, I sort of knew that he was going to be this for her, but I ended up building his character a lot more. So I didn't want him to feel like he was just there to basically be like her like queer, wise friend, like that he has his own issues that are going on. Stuff that he's talking to her about to feel comforted by, things that he's still processing about his identity. He's biromantically asexual and doesn't really know how to talk about that because he's dealing with his own like heteronormative expectations about prom and like relationships, and thinking like that he has to fulfill a certain role in any type of relationship he's in. But their dynamic for me was sort of a love letter to the type of community that queer people can have with one another, where I've had this happen for me when I was questioning my identity. I've felt fortunate enough that I've been able to provide it for other people. Just the existence of another queer person can sometimes be what it takes to validate you having those questions about yourself and wanting to speak out about it in some way. It almost gives you permission, like, oh, okay, like someone else is also in this space. Maybe I can be too. And for my main character, as someone who previously was like in love with basically any boy that gave her an iota of attention, she develops this very intimate platonic relationship with a boy, which I thought was really important as well to show how valuable friendships are alongside romance, that they can be just as impactful in your life, and that you can have a really close, loving relationship with someone and have it be platonic, and it still means so much to you and can really be valued the same way. He's also just such a sweetheart, so everyone ends up loving him. He's by far almost everyone's favorite character. I think I've heard very few people who preferred other people, but I just really love him because he's sort of a love letter to friendship and queer community in general.
Yeah, I love what you were saying earlier, Vanessa, about how the story wouldn't be the same without these side characters. And I think that's the marker of a truly good side character, is if like they're so integral to the main character, to the story, that like if you remove them, it's not the same anymore. I wanted to talk a little bit about some books in depth, in pairs, sort of. So the first pair I wanted to talk about was You Truly Assumed and Required Reading for the Disenfranchised Freshman, because I know that activism is a huge theme in both of these books. So I wanted to know, could you talk about how you shaped the activism storyline for these books?
Yeah. So when I first went to college, it was 2012, and that was around the time that the Trayvon Martin shooting happened and the Black Lives Matter movement started. So I really based the activism in the story based on that time period, and how me and my friends handled activism on campus during that time, especially going against college admission people and administrative people. During that time was a very weird thing because they would say all the right things, but they wouldn't do all the right things. So it was really like how it was based on how Savannah and her friends moved through really gaslighting because they were told, hey, I want to make this campus better for you, but nothing is being done to do that, to make that a reality for them. So the activism and required reading really follows Savannah shaping a movement from the ground up, basically. And so that's how I shaped her desire to speak up.
Yeah. I think with You Truly Assumed, back in high school and currently in college, I have been and I am really involved in my school with either like Black Student Alliance or Black Student Union. So I was already kind of really engaging in this community-based, I guess, work. And so I knew that I kind of wanted to draw from that when writing You Truly Assumed. And also back when I had first gotten this idea for the book, it was kind of right around when the Muslim ban was happening and all of what Trump's presidency meant for Muslims, and also kind of how Black Muslims were erased from the narrative. So I think writing the book in itself was kind of my own form of activism, but I was definitely drawing kind of from the communal work that I was already engaged in and have been engaged in. And I knew that there's a lot of not only friendship, but a lot of power can really come from just community and having community and working alongside other people to kind of achieve a common goal. And so I really drew heavily from that when writing You Truly Assumed.
Yeah, I think both of them almost speak so well in conversation, especially since like required reading is in college. And I feel like they fed really well into this like theme that they both talk about. And was pretty inspiring. I mean, in my opinion. The next, I want to talk about The Turning Point and Sunny G's series of rash decisions, because confronting our families, confronting our families, comma, and also confronting our complex like family dynamics is a theme that I think runs through both of your books. And so I wanted to know if you could talk about what it's like to create these complex and difficult sometimes relationships, and the family side characters to your main characters.
Yeah, it was really emotional and exhausting, confusing, inspiring, self-reflecting, all of the above, because I drew so much from my own experience as a Mexican American growing up in a family that didn't allow Spanish to be spoken outside of the home. And so that is a very confusing existence. And I also grew up in Minnesota, and at the time I didn't know any other Mexican American people other than my giant family. I mean, my dad's from a family of, I think my grandmother had 15 kids, and I've got 57 cousins, first cousins on that one side. And, we were just always together because no one else could stand us, probably. I don't know, just a big, huge family. And so that was my exposure to my culture. And, Spanish was spoken in my grandparents' home. But then once we went outside of those doors, it didn't happen. And so I wanted to write about the fact that there's a whole spectrum of being Latinx, of being, anything really. And so, just because I didn't grow up fluently speaking Spanish doesn't mean that I'm not Mexican enough to say that I am. And it has taken me a lifetime to get to that point. And Rosa is just right in the middle of it. She's in the middle of trying to figure that out. And so for me to write that, I had to actually look at my own life. And I had a lot of really good conversations with my dad. And just recently he said it's one of the biggest regrets he's ever had. And, that's really sad to me. And because we can't go back in time. And would we? I don't know, because I wouldn't be the person who I am today. I think that it's made me who I am. And I've finally where I can be proud of that. And Rosa's figuring that out as well. And so, yeah, it was hard. I mean, writing's hard, people. It's really hard, but fun. So yeah, that's how I got to the end game with the book, is I had some really hard days where I had to walk away from it for a little bit and then come back.
Yeah, 100% everything you said, Vanessa. Writing is bloody hard, isn't it? I'm a third culture kid, so I grew up in a lot of different countries, but I've always been sort of rooted to Punjabi as kind of like I guess kind of an identity that was kind of placed on us. So like I speak a lot of different languages, but Punjabi was the language that I've always been, kind of more or less comfortable with. So I wanted to, so when I was writing Sunny, I wanted him to be, more or less bilingual, like not 100% fluent in Punjabi, but he can, he can get by. So he's got all the cultural awareness and things like that. So so he's dealing with a lot of things, but his identity is also a major part of it as well. Where I was actually bullied when I was in middle school, and then I decided to take off my my turban and things like that. So I kind of imagined if this happened to him when he was a little bit older, like when he was 16, 17, when his identity is like fully formulated to the outward appearance of being a Sikh, what that trauma, which is it's kind of like a self-inflicted trauma, in response to a trauma, like external trauma with bullying and things like that. So so he's trying to sort of blend in, because he thinks that if he can look like everybody else, he won't get bullied and he won't stand out, which is obviously not the case. And the other sort of component with this was the family dynamic. So the other like one of the major themes in Sunny is he's dealing with the death of his alcoholic brother, and alcoholism isn't like unique to the Punjabi community. In terms of like it's popularized in music videos and all kinds of things, but one of the things with the Punjabi community is that is this idea of like what will people say, and seeking help. Those things are not really things that we actively do, and also the idea that just dealing with grief. So like his family's instinct is to keep Goldie, the brother, his stints at rehab hush hush because of the whole what are people going to say, or that or just even dealing with grief. They don't really process it in the way that Sunny wants to process it as an American teen, where he wants to talk about it, he wants to process it properly. And then just the other thing like with the alcoholism is that with the Punjabi community, it's sort of deemed as like a personal failing rather than an illness, which is something that I wanted to highlight, and at the same time not paint the parents as terrible people, but have them be that this is just how they know how to deal with it.
Yeah, this sort of juxtaposition, I guess, between like the conversations that we don't have in public and also the conversation we don't have as a family, I felt like were really prevalent in both of these, like this inside outside kind of spaces, and like transparency as well. And then for Ophelia After All, so as you mentioned before, questioning identity and like questioning our identity and the perceptions we have of ourselves is a huge theme in Ophelia After All. So I wanted to know, how is it for you to explore the theme within the book, and especially the pacing for Ophelia's character, in terms of like how you structure when, what kind of revelations and like what kind of developments for the character become.
Yeah, in the earliest drafts of Ophelia After All, from the beginning, she already was like aware that she was questioning her sexuality, and then we sort of went from there. But the more I worked on the book, the more I felt like it started too quickly, because I was like, well, where are we going from here? And so early on, it's almost that we as readers can recognize the things that she's identifying is attraction to another girl, is questioning these aspects of her identity. But she, as someone who thinks she knows herself very well and is very introspective, is like, yeah, I don't know, this is like super weird that I just think this girl's like super pretty and I want to spend all my time with her. And I felt like that was an important sort of juxtaposition to have, so that it's already being introduced to the readers and they can start identifying these things, but she as a character is sort of slowly coming to those revelations, because I wanted us to have a bit of a head start into her already processing these feelings. But the environment of the story, I think, was the most integral aspect of making her a character that's questioning so much about herself, because it takes place during these sort of final months of senior year and is particularly leading up to prom. And that's a time that at least I felt like my senior year was like, you form so many close friendships with people really quickly, and everyone's like, oh, where are you going? What are you going to do for college? What are you doing after school? Like, there are so many questions about what's happening next, and everything feels like it's happening so quickly that it's almost like instigates a lot of questions about yourself and your friendships and what's going on in your world. So I think that the environment was very important to that, because she's already having to ask herself a lot of questions about what's next for her. So for her then to be thinking, well, like, well, what's next for me in my relationships? What's next for me in my identity? Just sort of naturally flowed into that. And especially with it being prom that they're leading up to, Ophelia and a lot of her friends are dealing with questioning aspects of their romantic relationships and essentially like heteronormative expectations about what relationships are supposed to look like. And so that being the sort of central piece felt important, that prom, while it's become more accepting and embracing of different identities, is still this like celebratory experience where it's like, okay, the girls have dresses and they have a specific dress code, and the boys have tuxedos and they have a specific dress code for that. The boys ask the girls, you have corsages or boutonnieres, and those are gendered. Like there's prom king and prom queen, and even when we like try to sort of separate that, like it still comes down to a lot of these gender binary relationship roles. And so having all these characters be questioning aspects of their identity and their relationships during a time when they're supposed to be sort of following like very particular roles into what it means to be going to prom as a teenager, what it means to be growing up, um, played into a lot of those questions about her sexuality and her identity, and helped me with the pacing, because it felt more realistic then. Like, it's realistic for anyone at any time of their life to be questioning themselves, but I'm sure maybe you guys can relate to the fact that when you're writing realistic fiction, you almost have to make it more realistic than reality. Reality, you're allowed to have coincidences and you're allowed to have like spur of the moment decisions. You can't really do that in fiction as much because it's unrealistic, even though that is reality. So it was helpful to have an environment where everyone is really chaotic and frantic and there's so much going on. So characters could be having these really big revelations about themselves, these really big high stakes fights with their friends. And it felt more natural at that time. The pacing allowed it to be like, oh my gosh, there's so much happening. I can't even stop to breathe.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is all about that particular time period, like as the time sort of ramps up to leaving high school. I feel like everyone also has this opinion that like when you go to college, you have this fresh start and you can like rebrand yourself, I guess, you know? And I feel like sometimes that isn't as simple as it is. And like the actual process or the thoughts start much earlier than that. And I feel like you have all of these like books, yeah, that stress that like almost like that when you set your foot there, like you're totally different, which is not necessarily how it goes. Like the process is much more messy on both sides. I just wanted to remind people as well that they can drop questions in the chat for the Q&A portion. And before we go into those, though, I have some more questions as well. So I wanted to know, since as I said at the beginning of the panel, everyone has debuted. So I wanted to know what was an unexpected challenge that you had while debuting, or also like, I don't want to make it all like kind of sad. So maybe like an unexpected challenge, but also an unexpected like joy as well, to the process of debuting. Because I know that it is definitely different to debut now and than it was, you know, like 5 years ago. And then it probably will be in the next 5 years. So I think it's very specific to our time period right now. So yeah, unexpected like challenge and unexpected joy to debuting.
I don't think I had any unexpected challenges. Not to say there weren't challenges, but I just expected them all because I'm a Virgo with anxiety. So everything that could go wrong, I was already prepared for it. But thankfully, nothing really did. I think I've had a great debut experience. An unexpected joy has just been going to like panels or festivals. I went to my first in-person festival like last month. and having people actually recognize me, that was very unexpected but joyful.
Yeah, I guess an unexpected challenge for me would be how much I would care about the social media engagement that I received, like when I would post something about my book. It just like killed me inside a little bit. So I had to like step away from social media because I had these expectations, and I don't have a huge presence on social media. So why would I ever think that I would all of a sudden have a huge presence? I don't know. I guess I was like learning as I went, and I've found like the platform that speaks to me the most, which I love Instagram. I'm not really a Twitter person because it doesn't make me feel good about myself when I scroll through all this stuff sometimes. And so I just stick to what brings me joy. And what also brings me joy now are all the relationships that I have now with other writers. Writing is such a solitary thing. You can feel very alone sometimes. And so it's just been so wonderful being in the trenches with so many amazing writers and hearing their stories. And I went to my first in-person event as well and panel at ALA last month, and it was so amazing. And I did my first like real signing, and there was actually a line of people like that went down and around the corner, and I was like, are they all here for me? I mean, really? It was I was really shocked and humbled and surprised, and yeah, it was a beautiful thing, just so cool. And then to meet all the other authors there too, I was starstruck like every 5 minutes at ALA. So that was a unexpected joy.
Yeah, I'm not sure how unexpected this challenge was, but for me, there aren't very many like YA books by Black Muslim authors that feature Black Muslim characters. So I felt like there was a lot of pressure on me to kind of have to represent an entire community, which is just not possible. So once the book was out, I really just had to let it go and try not to internalize any of the feedback or I guess like reviews or anything like that, and just be like this has to stand on its own and it's the most authentic story that I could tell that represents who I am. And so just kind of, I guess, loving the book a little bit from afar, I kind of had to distance myself from it a little bit. And then I guess an unexpected joy. I just love walking into bookstores and like seeing my book on the shelves, and then I'll like go up and be like, "Hey, like I'm Layla Sabrine. Can I sign the stock?" And everyone's so nice. So it's been really great to like, I guess, just meet booksellers. Like I just came back from being in New York for 5 weeks for like a research program that I was doing. And I went to the Strand and my book was on the shelves and I got to sign copies. And it was just like, I don't know, it never gets old. And so I just love that like slice of joy that comes with, I guess, being a writer and being able to go inside bookstores and just see your books on the shelves, or go into a library and see your book on the shelf. Like I grew up in libraries, so that really, really hits home. So that's one of my favorite joys.
Yeah, it's really fun seeing my book in shops as well, and just especially like the local bookshop here in Fresno, where they've got like they had like a little thing that was like local author, and they had a little sign, and then everyone's really excited. Like my parents came out, and my grandmother came out, and she wanted to see it. But one of the other unexpected things with were challenged while I was writing this is so the I don't know if you can see on the cover here, but the original premise of Sunny was actually rooted in Harry Potter. So he was supposed to be like a Harry Potter cosplayer, and I was also at the copy editing stage, and I just didn't feel comfortable having that so ingrained in Sunny, because I'm you know I was studying literary fiction, so I'm used to being like, we'll let people get away with their stuff during their time period and all that. But it just got to a point where I just wasn't comfortable with it. So I was at the copy editing stage, and then I let the team know, and they were actually pretty supportive. I don't know if they expected me to, dismantle the entire thing and create a brand new fandom and create like a map, like I'm Saba Tahir. But I had like all this, I created this entire map for like, this made up fandom that is, pops in here and there, like a couple sentences here, a joke here and there. So, but it was actually quite a nice, supportive environment that I
Um, Similar to Layla, I don't know how much of my challenges were unexpected. Like, I had sort of prepared myself, obviously, for like, not everyone's gonna like the book, and I was totally fine with that. But I wasn't as prepared for like how uncomfortable and like frustrated it would be to get like homophobic reviews and like xenophobic reviews. Like, you can sort of brace yourself for that stuff because it's like something you just deal with fundamentally, living in a society. But I hadn't prepared myself as much for that. I was prepared for people to dislike it because all authors, like, that's a genuinely fine thing. And also, just for my book is about, like, the premise is a girl questioning her sexuality because she starts liking a girl, but it's not a romance novel. And that was something I really struggled with, is that it was sort of being talked about as a romance novel and having to constantly correct that because romance novels have particular genre conventions that readers expect. And I didn't want to feel like I was being inauthentic and lying to anyone when they picked up the book and were expecting to see a narrative about two girls falling in love when that's not what the story is, even remotely. Um, so that was just a difficult thing. And I felt like a lot of it was particular to writing like a queer book. There was this sort of expectation that, like, oh, it has to be a romantic narrative. We can't have a queer character that's like not in love and in a relationship. And that was just a frustrating thing to have to work through and try to talk about without it feeling like I was like harping on about the issue. But a really unexpected delight has been people reaching out the way that they have been when they've read the book. That I get a lot of messages, or I've gotten to meet a lot of young readers who are people who will post something like positive about the book and then on the side message me and say, like, I'm questioning my sexuality, or I'm figuring out stuff about my queerness, and this book really helped me. I've had people come up to me at panels and sort of like quietly say, like, I don't know what I am yet, but I know I'm something. And I recognize that they likely don't have a space in their life where they're able to talk about this super openly, or maybe with very many people. And just the feeling that a book that I wrote when I was 19 and trying to figure out my sexuality and didn't feel like I was able to talk about it with anyone, feeling like now I've created a space where young kids can talk to me about that, or at least have the safety of saying it to someone and not worrying about what it means for them, has been a really unexpected delight, and also feels like a privilege that I get to play some role in helping someone with some aspect of their identity. Is just kind of like the most rewarding thing that you can possibly think of. So that's just been really, really cool for me.
Okay, we have some questions. The first one was if you could quote, where is it? Yeah, if you could quote a line from your books. I don't know if, I don't remember any, like, I barely remember oftentimes what I'm reading as a whole. So I don't know if you all have it like on memory, memorized or whatever. But I wasn't sure if this was going to be too hard.
I can read my last line of my book. It's one of my favorite lines. Let me find it. So I don't have to be an activist just because I'm Black, the voice just because I'm Black. I can just be Black, whatever that means to me and no one else.
I love that. Mine's going to sound so ridiculous after that, because that was so beautiful. I'm just going to, I don't have it memorized, but it's something like Rosa she covets kind of her nemesis at the studio, Stacy, because Stacy has like the so-called perfect ballet body and seemingly has everything that Rosa wants. And she's thinking about how she's wishing she had all of the same things that Stacy does. And she says something like, Stacy could do an interpretive squid dance in clodhoppers and the audience would still leave starstruck. And so I love that line because it makes me laugh every time I loved writing it. It was funny when so anyway, yeah, that's mine.
Okay. I also don't remember it off the top of my head, so I'm just going to read it. But I love the first line of the book, which is in Sabria's perspective. And it's just whoever told me perfection was overrated straight up lied. I don't know. I feel like it's very voicey and it just like sets the tone for the entire book as well as Sabria's character. So it's one of my favorite lines.
I actually have mine memorized, and the only reason I have it is because it's a chapter on macarons, which was inspired by my daughter, who gets very offended if you mistake macarons and macaroons. She's actually offended with the entire concept that macaroons even exist. But the quote is basically, "I'll have one of those little burger pastries."
I learned my lesson because when I was doing in-person events, people kept requesting for me to write a quote in the book, and I did not have any quotes memorized, and I misquoted myself enough and had to like cross it out, and it was really embarrassing. So I now have like so many bookmarked quotes from my book on a digital copy. That has been a lifesaver. So I'll pick one that I don't think I've ever done before when people have asked for a quote. It's like a rewritten quote from Hamlet, which is my main character Ophelia in the book is named after the Ophelia from Shakespeare's Hamlet. And it's, "I may doubt the truth of the world, but never again will I doubt whether or not the person that I am or may be is loved or worthy of love. I know myself and I don't. Both can be true."
And then another question we got is, what advice can you give when a writer's having a block, like a writer's block?
I'm the most horrible person to ask advice for that because I will sit in my block for months. uh, but I guess to get out of it, I don't know. I guess acknowledge you're in your block and not try to push yourself to write something that you're not feeling, because that's worse than just, being in a block. I guess you're gonna have to go back and edit anyway, but for me, when I'm in a block, I take time to do things that I enjoy doing other than writing. I try not to make writing my whole entire life, because then once I do sit down to write again, it's more fun.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Kristen. I mean, I've been blocked a few times, and for me, it's just like walking away is really important. Giving myself permission to walk away. Music is a big help for me. I'm one of those writers that writes with music. I mean, the louder, the better. I love blasting. I can write in chaos. I wrote the whole first draft of The Turning Point in a cafe surrounded by people. I mean, so for me, it's like putting on some music or actually skipping that scene and writing another scene. Like if you know where you're headed at least, or like if whether it's in the middle or the end or whatever, just writing a different scene if you don't want to walk away from your laptop or your keyboard. Because some people feel like it's a failure if they're not getting words on the page, which it never is, ever, ever, ever. But if you want to get something on the page, just write something else. It doesn't even have to be the book that you're writing.
Yeah, I definitely echo that. I say my biggest thing is just giving myself grace. I encounter blocks a lot. Like I'm a college student, so there's just times when writing isn't possible or just not top of mind. And so just giving myself grace to kind of move through those periods. And then also I'm a big music person. Every story has an associated playlist. So if I still kind of want to stay in like the mindset of the story, I'll just listen to the playlist while I'm like, maybe like folding laundry or cooking dinner or something like that. So it's not like actively writing, but it kind of helps me stay engaged in the world of the story. And then I'm always of the mindset that one word is better than none. So if I have 10 minutes and I'm really feeling like writing, I'm just going to type something on my notes app, call it a day, even if that's all that I get down that day. Like that's progress. So really any progress is progress in my mind. But yeah, so that's kind of my tips, I guess.
Yeah, I do similar things. Like I've got a playlist that I get in the zone. If I can't write something, I will just go take a walk. I'll listen to some music. I'll do something other than writing, and then I just hope that when I get back, suddenly some magical force will bring the words back.
Yeah, I feel like for me, a helpful thing for writer's block has just been basically like write it however you need to write it right now. So a lot of the time that means like switching what I normally do. And over the past year, I dealt with a lot of like multiple deadlines at the same time, and then we had like a lot of deaths in the family. So I was dealing with a lot of grief and needed to extend deadlines a lot. So I was under a lot of time crunches during like a difficult emotional time. So a lot of time I was like, look, if it has to be bad right now, it's going to be bad right now. Just like write it bad right now. Or if I was struggling with a scene, it was like, you know, oh, I don't know how to open the scene. Okay, just start writing the scene in the middle of it, and then you can fill it in later. So a lot of just like do whatever you need to do to make it work right now. Don't try to fit yourself into something that's not working, because yeah, like Layla said, like some words are better than no words. Like I can edit bad writing, I can't edit nothing. So if I need to not work today and need to work a bunch tomorrow, I'll do it like that. If I need to use like Pomodoro sprints, if I need to just write with an outline, without an outline, if I need to just go to the end of the document and start writing random dialogue and see if it takes me somewhere later, like just trying different things I think is really helpful when you're feeling stuck, because it can sort of loosen things up a little. So if you're trying a completely different technique, that can be helpful. But also, yeah, just giving yourself permission to do like bad writing, I feel like is one of the most universally helpful piece of advice, because you edit it a million times anyways. So like it doesn't need to be great now. It's not being published the second you write that sentence. So if it's bad now, who cares? Like no one has to see it.
Hello?
Hello, we lost you.
Yeah, it's just like technology. What I was gonna say is that um, I love when this question gets asked, because I feel like sometimes people ask me how you work through or like how you stop creative burnout, which I feel like is such a cruel question, because I would like to know that answer, but no one ever gives me the answer. But anyway, the the last question that we have is, if you wanted, oh, sorry, what does it say? If you decided to go on a road trip, which one of your characters would you take with you and why?
I am taking Mrs. Flowers in the novel because she's like, she's the auntie character of the book, I guess. She has all the good snacks. I know she has the good music. I'm taking her.
This is easy for me because I would bring Prince. Yes, the purple one himself. Prince, he is in my book. He is my character's obsession. He's the catalyst for everything that's happening right now in the story. And I would absolutely, hands down, love to go on a road trip with Prince. I think he would bring good snacks too, I'm pretty sure. And he would also bring really good music. And of course, it would be on a cassette player because we're talking about the 80s here. So I'd be in an older car with the windows down, with the cassette player going, maybe some sneak peeks at the next album. And I don't know, maybe we just head east. I'm not sure. I'm going to go on and on and on because now I'm somewhere else.
I think I would probably choose Farah because out of the three main characters, she's the one who would like, if she got lost, she would figure it out the fastest. And it would take me forever to figure it out. So I'm just gonna go with her.
I would go with Raj, who's he owns an ice cream truck and he's just very relaxed about things. He doesn't have like, as much as I love Sunny, he's got a lot of baggage. He overthinks everything. So if we were making a plan, I feel like he would just be Googling everything and researching it, whereas Rod would just be like, yeah, let's go eat at Taco Bell or whatever comes along.
I would love to spend time with Ophelia. However, she and I both can't drive, don't know how to drive. So I would need to pick someone who can drive the car for the road trip. So I think I'd pick either Sammy or Agatha, which are Ophelia's two closest friends. Sammy, I think, would be very fun, and I imagine he has very good taste in music. But he's also very chaotic, and Agatha is a lot more of like a type A, organized, get stuff done. So I think it would be a safe bet to go with either of them, but they would be very different trips.
Sorry, there's just like utter chaos on my end. um, thank you everyone so much for chatting with me. I have to sort out the giveaway link on my own because it is getting too chaotic, but I will update everyone what it is, and I will put the link in the description box of the panel, and also put it on social media. So I'm sorry about that, but I promise I will sort out the chaos demon in my life. Thank you all so much for joining, and also the bookshop.org links are down below for all of the books. And I hope everyone just has a really great day. Thanks for chatting with us. Also, thank you so much to the authors. And yeah, I hope everyone has a really great day or waking hours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.